We're going to have two talks, one by Danielle Cérézuelle, the other by Justine McIntyre. I don't know. Justine. Okay, so without further ado, you already have profiles in the program. So Danielle, and I will time you so that you don't go.
Good morning, everybody. First, I want to thank you, the organizers of this conference, for inviting me. It was a long way from Bordeaux, and they really helped me in achieving this trip to Chicago for the second time, actually. Okay, I'm going to talk about organization as technique. It's an important feature of technological society which is often overlooked. But it explains why our world is bound to be, in a way, more and more technocratic, and also why our lives are being ruled by distant anonymous actors and powers. Now, that modern technique is a growing depersonalizing power, I think, can be better understood when we consider what Ellul calls organizational technique. That is technique which operate by designing immaterial processes. And before I address this, I would like to say a few words first about what is called, has been already mentioned by Carl yesterday, the think turn, or the empirical turn in contemporary philosophy of technology. Now, that organization is technique, as Ellul said already in 1954, is an essential tenet of Ellul's sociology of technology, but it is neglected, I think, by contemporary understanding of technique, especially since the 90s, when philosophy of technology has taken an empirical turn, moving away from broad description of the operation of technique and refocusing on the study of technical objects and social practices organized around the designing and the use of technical objects. Now, for example, according to Bruno Latour, technique considered as a global phenomenon does not exist. And Latour is of the opinion that to carefully consider the role of technology, we must now focus on technical objects when they are being created and on the agents involved in their creation, either directly or indirectly. I remind you that objects mean what stands in front of me and what is experienced by my senses. So it means that materiality of techniques is their essential feature. Now, indeed, such an approach reduces the risk of straying into metaphysical generalities, yet this purported realism leaves aside a whole array of contemporary technological realities, that is, practices and processes which are at once technological and intangible, but contribute to the depersonalization of contemporary life. Excuse me, am I clear? Can you understand my clumsy English? Yeah? Good. If not, let me know. Now, these practices and processes are, in a way, the invisible continent which is ignored by many. But if we consider strategy, management, logistics, administration, planning, propaganda, and many other intangible techniques of organization, we can see that they increasingly and narrowly frame the spatial, temporal, and relational dimensions of our daily lives. I think, and this field of intangible technologies should not be neglected on the pretense that they are a spatial area separate from physical technology. Not only is the development of these techniques a result of the progress of material techniques, it is conditioned and required by the progress of material techniques, but in addition, in turn, it has become one of the conditions for the development of material techniques. So there is a circular relationship. For example, we should not forget that techno-scientific innovation has now become dependent on research and development management techniques. And I think that one is condemned, and when I say I think, I should say Ellul thinks. Excuse me. I tend always to say je. When others are really the creator. One is condemned to a merely limited understanding of the unfolding of material technique if one doesn't take into account, into consideration, the unfolding of intangible techniques along with the interaction between the two. Now, that the functionalization of personal and collective life has been perceived as a problem is not an entirely new thing. Ellul was not the first one to say that, you know. I found a very early example in a piece by Carlyle written in 1829 with the title Signs of Times. You can download it on the internet. Carlyle, at that time, warned us that since our true deity is mechanism, so you see that the sacralization of technology is not a new phenomenon, many non-material areas of human activity are being submitted to a technological framing, and he mentioned especially education and pedagogy. And in this domain, Carlyle's antennas were more sensitive than those of his contemporary, young contemporary Karl Marx. Marx was interested only in machinery, mechanical transformation of the world by physical technology. Carlyle sensed that there was something else coming. And this, we can find the same feeling in other thinkers like Ernst Junger, I would say a fascist, Romano Guardini, not a fascist, Heidegger, almost a fascist. They, a large group, not a large group, but a few thinkers, in the 20s and 30s, understood the possibility of a technicization of human existence. But I must say that none of them undertook a serious analysis of the problem. Now, one striking exception is found in the work of, what our friend Christian Roy called the Bordeaux School, that is Ellul and Charbonneau, who gave a great importance to the development of intangible techniques of organization and attempted to characterize the role of these techniques in establishing a technological society, and the problem that the risk which result for freedom and also depersonalization of life. To be fair, if we want to follow this personalist approach to techniques of organization, technologies of organization, we should start with a forgotten philosopher of the 20s, 30s, Nicolas Berdyaev. Berdyaev in 1933 published a book in France called L'homme et la machine, Man and Machine. I think there is I'm not sure, there is probably an English translation. Berdyaev advocated for an existential, socialist and spiritualist personalism, and he explained that humankind has entered the technical era. And he insisted that the advent of mechanization and the sudden increase in material and economic power are only the most visible aspect of a deeper phenomenon, and the installation of a new anthropological system that of organization, and which affects every aspect of modern life. So he writes that the technical world thus extends much further than material machines. And he says that the result is an anthropological transformation that is being undetected. He insists on that. So he writes that so doing, man creates a new cosmos, a new world, not simply machines. It's much more encompassing. He creates a new world, a second nature, and he says on the sole basis of what his rational mind is capable of knowing. What the result is a de-symbolized world. And he insists that the transformation by technology and of our culture is so profound that the task in fact, the result is a disorganization of our cultures. So the result is that the task of organization knows no limit, because we must replace every aspect. We must reconstruct all the dimensions of our life according to technological logic. He writes, the old organic order collapses and a new form of organization created by technology inevitably prevails. Now, it is clear, we know, that Charbonneau and Ellul had read Berdyaev. Ellul mentions his book in his bibliography of La Technique. So, in a way, they spent their life in developing these ideas. In a systematic way, beginning in 1935, that is 2 years after the publication of Berdyaev's book, when they wrote their guidelines for a personalist manifesto. So Charbonneau and Ellul, they were 25 and 23, got together and wrote a manifesto where they stated the necessity of a revolution away from a technological world. And they extended Berdyaev's analysis and developed an approach of technique non-mechanicist. They insisted only in 1935, it is not an industrial procedure, but a general procedure. You will find this idea in 1954 book of Ellul. And the examples they give are mostly characterized by the intangibility of the process which are involved in this new technological world. They mention first intellectual techniques, economic technique, political technique, juridical technique, and at the end, only mechanical technique. So, what is important is that they mention first intellectual techniques. They insist that the technical phenomenon, the modern technical phenomenon, is interpreted first as inseparable from a state of mind that can apply the same rules in principles in all areas of human action, and not just action upon matter. This was developed in several papers and writings by Charbonneau first, who wrote on organization. He was, as a person, very sensitive to the experience of the powerlessness of the individual before the impersonal and depersonalizing logic of modern social organization. It is in his 1937, le sentiment de la nature comme force révolutionnaire, that is, the sense of nature as a revolutionary force, that he used for the first time the word organization for describing the forces that subjugate social life under an impersonal and abstract order that leaves nothing untouched. This will be further developed in one of his main books called L'État, the State. You have to remember that just after the war, the Second World War, Charbonneau and Ellul had a discussion, and Charbonneau said, okay, Jacques, you are going to work on technique and I'm going to work on the state, because these are the two main problems of our world. And so both of them worked along those lines, and in 1949, Charbonneau had written L'État, the state, and well, it took him 40 years before he could find a publisher. And he used a lot the notion of organization. He writes, for example, to turn society into an efficient organization, the state conquers it, replacing the diversity of the spontaneous order with the unity of an organization in which everything starts from the center, where an apparatus of outer determination replaces inner bonds. Okay, we find the same ideas, of course, in Ellul, who will insist at the beginning of the technological society that what distinguishes a world in which there are only separate techniques from a new world of la technique is precisely the fact that non-material technique of organization become the essential feature. And he suggests a classification of these various non-material techniques of organization. He developed that also in the technological system. He says that the development of material technique calls forth that of organization, and insists that we have come to a stage now where productive forces are no longer the infrastructure of society. Like, okay, in a way, we are no longer in an industrial society, such as Marx described it. But these productive forces now have become a superstructure that is a secondary level, and at the bottom, what has become essential is social organization infrastructure that may at once perform the indispensable research for new progress and integrate this material progress into the life of society. And of course, he insists that a decisive development occurs with the computer. He says, we are dealing now with total technicization when every aspect of human life is subject to control, manipulation, experimentation, observation, so that demonstrable efficiency can be obtained everywhere. So we are the progress of material, I mean, for a century of industrialization led to a situation where on the social and political plane any increase of material power leads to an increase of technocratization of political life, bureaucratization of social life. And our lives are more than ever subjected to centralized, hierarchical, opaque management and technical patterns over which we have little control. So this is a new trend of society where immaterial techniques are leading the way. And that this may result in a total functionalization of human existence. Okay, I think I finished.